Hello. I declare open this hearing of the Senate Economics Legislation Committee into the 24-25 Supplementary Budget Estimates. I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. The committee has set 28 November as the date by which senators are to submit written questions on notice, and 9 January 2025 as the date for the return of answers to questions taken on notice for today's proceedings. The committee's proceedings today will begin with Geoscience Australia. Under Standing Order 26, the committee must take all evidence in public session. This includes answers to questions on notice. I remind all witnesses that in giving evidence to the committee, they are protected by parliamentary privilege. It is unlawful for anyone to threaten or disadvantage a witness on account of evidence given to a committee, and such action may be treated by the Senate as a contempt. It is also a contempt to give false or misleading evidence. The Senate has endorsed the following test of relevance of questions at estimates hearings. Any questions going to the operations or financial positions of the departments and agencies which are seeking funds in estimates are relevant questions for the purpose of estimates hearings. I remind officers that the Senate has resolved that there are no areas in connection with the expenditure of public funds where any person has a discretion to withhold details or explanations from the Parliament or its committees unless the Parliament has expressly provided otherwise. The Senate has resolved also that an officer of a department of the Commonwealth shall not be asked to give opinions on matters of policy and shall be given reasonable opportunity to refer questions asked of the officer to superior officers or to a minister. This resolution does not preclude questions asking for explanations of policies or factual questions about when and how policies were adopted. Witnesses are reminded of the Senate order specifying the process by which a claim of public interest immunity should be raised. I incorporate the public immunity statement into the Hansard. I remind all senators that as we continue our work implementing the Set the Standard report as chair, I will ensure that proceedings are conducted in an orderly, respectful and courteous way. The committee has agreed to authorising all media outlets to record the proceedings of the public hearings subject to the broadcasting resolutions in the standing orders and the following conditions. Media entry is subject to not exceeding the maximum capacity. A witness may object to being recorded at any time. Recording must not occur from behind the committee or between committee and witnesses, etc., etc. An officer called to answer a question for the first time should state their full name and the capacity in which they appear. I remind committee members and witnesses who are appearing via video conference and who are not speaking to please mute your microphones. I welcome Senator the Honourable Tim Ayres, representing the Minister for Industry and Science and representing the Minister for Resources. And the committee welcomes representatives of Geoscience Australia. Are there any opening statements that you wish to give?
James Johnson, Chief Executive Officer of Geoscience Australia. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would like to make an opening statement on this occasion.
Thank you, Dr Johnson.
I'd like to take this opportunity to inform the committee that in August this year I advised Minister King and Secretary Quinn of my intention to retire later this year. Tonight will be my last estimates appearance. Geoscience Australia has been my professional home since January 2006 when I commenced as the Chief of Minerals Division after 20 years in the mining and mineral exploration industries. The last 8 years as Chief Executive Officer have been the highlight of my career and an absolute honour. Every day I feel privileged to lead this organisation of talented professionals and advocate for the work that our team does that is so valuable to the nation. Throughout my tenure as CEO, the team at Geoscience Australia has generated many successes, and many of those I've had the privilege of speaking to you about. As an organisation, we've made huge strides as we've pursued science excellence through our programs, all of which have been supported by governments on both sides of politics and many industry and academic stakeholders. We've achieved gender balance in our senior leadership team. We're accepting and encouraging of all areas of diversity in our people, and overall have created a strong, positive and safe culture for everyone working at Geoscience Australia, something of which I'm personally very proud. I'm also proud of the work that has been done to create the Digital Earth Australia platform for satellite Earth observations, an unsurpassed tool for natural resource management. We've built more accurate GPS positioning for all Australians through the Positioning Australia program. In so doing, enabling precision agriculture, location-enabled robotics, safer aviation and much more. We've delivered the groundbreaking Exploring for the Future program, which has changed industry's perceptions of Australia's attractiveness for resources exploration, taking this nation from 8% of global exploration expenditure to 18% over 8 years. The program has also secured vital groundwater resources for a number of remote communities. We've built the Digital Atlas of Australia, connecting geographic data with diverse socio-economic data to enable richer insights for place-based policy design and decision-making. Importantly, the Digital Atlas is gaining traction and uptake across a range of APS departments and is likely to become a widely used tool within government. And most recently, we've signed the strategically important Landsat Next agreement with the United States Geological Survey, securing the satellite data feeds that are increasingly essential to government decision-making and a wide range of Australian businesses. Lastly, Geoscience Australia is poised to continue its important resources-related pre-competitive geoscience to secure a robust resources sector into the future and underpin the Future Made in Australia program for the next generation. I'm humbled that the expertise and knowledge offered by Geoscience Australia has been increasingly recognised by both Parliament and more broadly across the Australian and international community. And I would like to thank the Senate for the opportunities that Estimates has provided us to demonstrate the value that Geoscience Australia provides to Australia. To finish, I'd like to reiterate how privileged I feel to have led what has been described more than once in these hearings as the best government organisation. And I know I leave Geoscience Australia in good hands and poised for continued success.
Thank you very much, Dr. Johnson, for that opening statement, but more to the point, on behalf of the committee, thank you so much for the dedication and the commitment that you've shown to the organisation and to the people that it serves. And it's really, your passion and commitment has really shone through in your statement there, so we thank you for your service. I'm sure that you won't miss Senate estimates. It's probably the least favourite part of your role, but we thank you very much for being here with us this evening. Go straight to questions. Senator Bragg.
Thank you very much. And we in the Liberal National Parties would also like to associate ourselves with the remarks of the Chair and wish you well. Thank you for being here tonight. Is there any work that you do within the agency where you analyse alternative policies, including policies that have been deployed by the opposition?
No, not to my knowledge. We work on behalf of the government of the day.
Okay, so there hasn't been any analysis done of opposition policies?
No, Senator.
We need to find some.
Oh, there's plenty. Okay, and
It's sort of existential.
do you think that
questions.
Australia's... Can you describe Australia's seismic geography?
Seismic geography, if you're essentially seeking a comparison with global seismology, is that what you're seeking?
Yeah.
It's a relatively low seismic activity globally. We sit well within tectonic plate, away from plate boundaries. So whilst we have many lower magnitude earthquakes, we don't have the larger earthquakes that are associated with nations that are right on tectonic boundaries.
Okay. Does Geoscience have any seismic concerns with the location of ANSTO's Lucas Heights facility?
I beg your pardon?
Does Geoscience have any seismic concerns with the location of ANSTO's Lucas Heights facility?
No, Senator, we don't.
Right. Why not?
It's not something we... First of all, it's not something we've considered. Secondly, to my knowledge, but I can test this with our experts, there is no earthquakes that I can recall within that area around Lucas Heights for many years, but I can validate that, and if I've given you an incorrect answer, we'll correct the record on notice, Senator.
Yeah, okay. So is Chris Bowen your minister?
No. Minister Madeleine King is our minister.
Okay. Okay, I'm just reading, there's a transcript I'm reading here from an interview that Minister Bowen did with Steve Kinane on ABC Radio National. And he said, this is in, when is this, October 24? Okay, so quite recently. It must have been when you were, did you present recently at a parliamentary inquiry?
Geoscience Australia did. I personally did not, but yes, we did.
And what was that?
Beg your pardon?
What was the committee?
It was the committee inquiring into the nuclear industry, or whether there should be one. I don't recall the exact name of the inquiry, but I think we know which one we're talking about.
But you didn't attend, it was someone else?
That's correct, it was someone else.
Okay, I just want to read into the record here what Minister Bowen said. So, quote, well, if you look at what else Geoscience Australia said to the committee yesterday, they said, and I quote, you need significant and serious geotechnical work done to assess a site before you can guarantee it's appropriate for a nuclear reactor, end quote. So is that based on some work that you've done?
No, it's based on global norms. If you're going to build a nuclear reactor on a site, you would want to understand its seismological character beforehand.
So is that based on work you've done for the government?
Look, honestly, he said that he hasn't been asked to evaluate opposition policies. If you want to, in this hearing, try and reverse engineer the fact that the sites of these 7 nuclear reactors, no geosciences work has been done. I've driven through one of them several times. Earthquakes are a feature of its natural environment at the moment. But if you want to reverse engineer that by commencing asking Geosciences Australia about the physical risks or otherwise, the geotechnical assessments that haven't been done, well, I suppose it's a welcome improvement on announcing 7 nuclear reactors in communities that didn't ask for them without any geotechnical assessment beforehand. From the same party that gave us Snowy 2.0, said it would cost $2 billion. Now it's $12 billion. This is an utter shambles, and if you want to embarrass the Liberal and National Party anymore by continuing to ask questions about it, be my guest. We've got until 8 o'clock.
Okay, that's great. That's very mature, isn't it? Thank you for that, Chair. So I'm trying to ascertain, Mr Johnson, whether these statements made by Minister Bowen, who's doing a great job for your government, Minister Ayres, great job. One of your best assets. He's one of your best assets. One of your best assets. Every day he goes on TV, it's a good day for us.
He's not making stuff up as he goes along, which is what your show has been doing on this.
I say roll out Minister Bowen. Roll him out every day.
I'm looking for a question, Senator
I think you just permitted a very lengthy
I answered your
summary.
question and invited you to ask some more because I'd be delighted to hear more. Be delighted to hear more. If anybody's watching,
I'm looking for.
I'm sure
I'm looking for both of your gentlemen's comments to be either a question or an answer.
Well, it wasn't. I mean, you know, with the greatest respect, and I'm loath to do this because usually I try and be quite genuine in these hearings. But I mean, I wasn't asking the minister for his opinion on politics. I was asking the official about whether they've done any work. So apparently, I think the answer is no. Is that right?
On Lucas Heights?
I'm just trying to ascertain whether, this is not a trick question, whether the statements made by Minister Bowen, who I accept is not your minister, on the radio, where he refers to Geoscience Australia, that is not based on any work that you know about.
It's not work that we have done, but it is based on global norms and what would make good, prudent sense ahead of building a nuclear reactor.
Fine, that may well be the case, but he obviously used the name of your organisation and has asserted that you have said something. So I was just wanted to get that on the record.
I don't think in the inquiry we were asked about Lucas Heights specifically. I think we're being asked about other sites.
Okay, so we'll take from that that's been based on his general opinion rather than anything that you've done for the minister.
That's correct.
I think it was based upon the evidence that Geosciences gave.
Hang on.
You
don't work in this agency. How do you know?
You know, I'm entitled to answer questions, and as a casual observer of the sequence of these things, with great interest in how it is that such a flawed, uncosted policy could be advanced by any serious party of government, I did follow both the hearings and what the Minister said. And the Minister referred to questions that were asked of this agency that the official has just answered for you in some detail. That is, they were never asked by Mr O'Brien
we're the opposition.
or any of
we don't get access to these
other
officials.
people
You know that.
For a geotechnical
we're the opposition.
assessment. And so you have advanced a policy position to build nuclear reactors in locations for which there has been zero geotechnical work done. It's an embarrassment. Utter embarrassment.
This is good. How long will this go for, Chair?
We've got till 8 o'clock.
Should we give him a bit longer? I think he's keen to keep on talking.
Well, you keep asking questions and we'll keep answering them.
Well, I'm not asking. Do you work at Geoscience Australia?
I'm barely technically qualified, Senator Bragg, to work in the Australian Senate. Just like you, I leave geotechnical issues to the experts, which is what Mr O'Brien should have done.
Thanks for that. That was really helpful. I think that's all. We have some other questions on notice, but we might move to the... I think we will go to... They can't be asked, is it? Okay, I think we'll go to the next...
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have some questions on notice for you.
Sure.
That concludes the questions that we have for Geoscience Australia. Again, thank you very much, Dr Johnson, and you go with our thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Mr Chesworth.
Okay, so there's variations tomorrow night, isn't there?
We now welcome representatives of the National Reconstruction Fund Corporation. We'll take a very brief suspension while they come to the table. The committee resumes with the National Reconstruction Fund Corporation and we welcome Ms Mannon, the acting CEO, back for your second estimates, I think, with us in that role. Did you have any opening statements or are you happy to go straight to questions?
Straight to questions, Senator.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to your team. Senator Bragg.
Okay, thanks very much. Good evening. In terms of the Reconstruction Fund, this is a fund that was named by the government, is that right?
Rebecca Mannon, Acting Chief Executive Officer, National Reconstruction Fund Corporation. Yes, Senator, that's the case.
Yeah, and so what are we reconstructing from?
Senator, the objects of the NRFC is to diversify and transform Australian manufacturing capability.
Because, I mean, reconstruction was sort of a term that was used after the Second World War, after there had been an enormous conflict and a very significant period in history, a lot of change. And so I'm just wondering, what exactly is the nation recovering from?
Senator, I'm really happy to talk about the purpose of the NRFC and the job that's been asked of us by government, which is to, as I said, diversify and transform Australia's manufacturing capability. We're here to help manufacturers scale and grow and to facilitate flows of finance into 7 priority areas of the economy.
Okay. And how much money is in the NRF?
The NRFC is a $15 billion investment vehicle.
Is the money there now?
Senator, $5 billion was appropriated to the NRFC special account on commencement of the Act, which was the 18th of September 2023.
So it's got $5 billion in the bank now?
There's $5 billion appropriated to the special account, yes, Senator.
Is that money held by the Future Fund?
No, Senator.
It's held by the NRF?
There's $5 billion, Senator, in the NRFC special account,
Okay.
and the NRFC draws down on those funds in line with the pipeline of investments.
Okay. And who's the chair at the moment?
The chair of the NRFC board is Martine Wilder.
Okay. And when was she appointed?
He was
Sorry,
appointed.
sorry. No, sorry.
I believe it was back in August of 2023, Senator, but my departmental colleagues will correct me if that's wrong.
Okay. And how many people are on the board?
There are 9 board members.
Okay. And how often does the board meet?
The board is required to meet at least 6 times a year, but they meet far more frequently than that, Senator.
And what does are the board members remunerated?
Yes, Senator, they are.
And how much do they get paid?
They're paid in accordance with the determination of the Remuneration Tribunal, Senator. I'll just see if I have that material available. Yeah. The chair is remunerated $132,610.
$132,000, okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And remaining board members are remunerated $65,920.
65 grand a head. And they do 6 meetings a year, is that right?
There's a legislative requirement to hold a minimum of 6 meetings per year, Senator,
Okay.
but they do hold many more than that.
Can they do those meetings remotely?
It's a combination of virtual meetings, Senator, as well as in person.
Okay. And who appointed these ministers? Sorry, who appointed these board members?
Board appointments are a matter for the government, Senator.
Which minister?
Troy Sloan, head of division, sovereign capability and supply chains. Senator, the minister responsible is Minister Husick, and these are significant appointments, so they go through the cabinet process.
And how many of these people are former union officials?
I'm sorry, Senator, can you repeat the question?
How many of these board members are union officials or former union officials?
Senator, there are 2 members of the board who have those sorts of backgrounds.
2 out of a board of 8, is it?
Board of 9, Senator.
Okay. Now, who's the CEO at the moment?
I'm the acting CEO, Senator.
Okay. And what's the process for having a permanent CEO?
Senator, you might be aware that the former permanent CEO, Ivan Power, resigned on the 12th of September of this year, and the board is currently in market to identify a permanent CEO to take his place.
What day did he resign?
The 12th of September.
And how long was he in the role?
He was in the role from February.
So he was in the role for 7 months.
Thereabouts, Senator.
Was he appointed by the board?
He was appointed by the board, Senator, in accordance with the legislation. That's correct.
Okay. Any reason why he didn't have a particularly long tenure?
Senator, as the statement from the NRFC...
I suspect that it would be better, Senator Bragg, if you had read the statement and discussed it with your colleagues. There has been quite some... Mr Power issued a statement publicly on his LinkedIn page, which goes into some detail about the reasons for his departure. And
Okay, the chair's just given me an indication about that, so... Okay, fair enough. So, who is conducting the search for a new CEO?
Senator, the board is being supported by Johnson Partners.
Johnson Partners. Mm-hmm. And are you in the mix for this role?
No, Senator, I'm not.
Okay. And when do you think this process will be completed?
Senator, the board is moving as quickly as they can to identify a candidate. As soon as possible is the answer that I'd give.
Pardon?
As soon as possible. They're looking to appoint a candidate as soon as possible.
This year?
I would hope so.
Okay, so in the interim, are you able to execute the duties of the CEO?
Yes,
in
Senator.
acting capacity?
Yes.
Yeah, and so what does that involve?
The CEO is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the corporation, including exercising delegations that are passed to the CEO from the board.
Who makes the investment judgments?
Senator, there is a governance process that we go through in terms of decision-making around investments, and I'm very happy to pass to Dr Manning if you'd like her to take you through that.
Before you do that, I just want to understand, so is there a process where you have to report publicly your investment, the contents of your investments? Is that quarterly?
Yes, Senator. There is a legislative requirement to report quarterly on our investments.
When is that started?
I'm sorry?
Has that started?
Yes, Senator.
So when was the first report?
September. It was published in October for the September quarter.
October this year?
2023, Senator.
Okay, 2023. Okay. And do you have an annual report obligation?
Yes, Senator, we do.
And you published your first annual report?
Yes, we have.
Okay. Are there any additional reporting requirements?
Senator, we also are required, as with other corporate Commonwealth entities, required to publish a corporate plan, which we've done.
Okay. And what is the process for someone to apply to do you call it the front door?
We don't call it a front door.
What do you call it?
Senator? There are a range of ways in which project proponents can get in contact with the NRFC. There's a web portal on our website where people can get in touch with us, but of course as we have continued to expand our outreach and engagement with the sector, there are individuals who may provide proposals through other means which are referred back into the process and are dealt with in the same way.
Okay. And who is the CIO?
The CIO is Dr Manning, sitting beside me.
Dr Manning. Okay. And how's it going with the investment so far?
Mary Manning, Chief Investment Officer at National Reconstruction Fund. So far, the investments are proceeding along. We have a detailed investment process which starts with eligibility and making sure that investment proposals meet with our Act and our mandate. Then after proposals go through that phase, there's 3 different phases of due diligence. An initial assessment, phase 1 due diligence, phase 2 due diligence, and then those proposals and those potential investments move on to voting and then investment. So we have a robust pipeline of investments, and we made our first investment, which was announced last week.
Okay, and what was that?
It was an investment in Russell Minerals Equipment, RME.
Okay, and what do they do?
They make mining equipment. It's an Australian company that manufactures mining equipment. They are based in Toowoomba. They meet our eligibility criteria in terms of fostering manufacturing. They meet some of our other criteria in terms of job creation, regional development, and commercialisation of Australian innovation and technology.
Okay, so are you the person that makes all the judgments on investments?
I'm the Chief Investment Officer. There is a process by which investments go through. There's an investment team, and in that initial assessment phase, it's a variety of people on the team. There's a deal team assigned to every investment that's being in the initial assessment. Then that goes through phase 1 and phase 2. There's an executive investment committee, which meets once a week to review proposals and determine whether they continue on in that investment process. And then there's also a board investment committee, which decides on investments.
Who's on the board investment committee?
Currently, the board investment committee is the same composition as the board of directors.
That's the whole board.
Yes.
Why is there no subcommittee?
Go ahead.
Senator, as you might expect in the early stages of a corporation's life with making investment decisions such as this, the board agreed that those decisions were quite important and they would all like to participate in the decision-making process
The
for
whole
the
board
investments.
participates in this investment process?
Yes, Senator.
For every investment?
For all of the investments that make it through the process that Dr Manning has just outlined and require approval from the board.
Okay, is there a risk committee?
There is.
Who chairs that? Don't tell me it's the whole board again.
No, there is a board audit and risk committee that is chaired by Catherine Presser.
Okay, who else is on that?
Two other of our board members, Karen Smith-Pomeroy and Ahmed Fahua.
Okay. And does that have a risk register?
It has a range of governance and documentation that sits around the operation of that community.
Does it have a log of all the material risks that face the organisation?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. Financial and non-financial?
Yes, Senator.
And are there controls against those risks?
Yes, Senator. Yes.
Okay. Is that something you can provide the committee?
I'm happy to take it on notice and see what I'm able to provide.
Okay, so the whole board sits in on the meeting when the corporation is considering making an investment.
The board investment committee
Which is the whole board.
Correct, Senator, considers proposals that are put for it after it has gone through the process that Dr Manning described.
Okay, you're not worried about that process? It's a lot of cooks.
I'm confident in our process, Senator.
Okay, so then what is your media policy? Because I know that Dr Manning has been making a number of statements at various places, and so is the chair. So how does the corporation manage its media engagement?
Senator, we consider a range of different proposals and invitations that are put to us in relation to speaking events and other opportunities that can help us provide Senator, a number of speaking opportunities that allow us to talk to the progress that the NRFC is making and to provide a full range of stakeholders about the work that we're doing and what we're aiming to do for Australian manufacturing.
There's an article in the Sydney Morning Herald on the 13th of November called Albanese's $15 billion tech fund gets ready to write first cheques. Do you know about that article?
I don't have it in front of me, Senator.
You've never heard of the article? You remember that in some way?
There's been a lot of articles that have been written recently, Senator.
I think it's reasonable that if you want to ask questions about an article that you provide it to the people that you're asking questions of. So you could table the article if you would like.
So it's called Albanese's $15 billion tech fund gets ready to write first cheques. I assume they're not actual cheques you're using.
No, Senator.
Very droll, Senator.
Okay, do you want me to send this to Secretary? Okay, we'll table the document so you can see it. So I guess my question is, well, maybe, do you want me to stop while I table the document? Because I have questions I'd like to ask the witness. It's going well here, about the document.
I think it's probably okay to ask questions and then people can say that they'd like to see the document if they need to. I just note the time as well. So we're at We're at 7:09 and we're due to move to the next witness shortly. But you still have questions.
I do. I need to send. You want me to table this, so I need to do that. So sorry, it'll take a while. Okay, I'll just send it to the secretary. So we'll wait for the secretary to receive the email.
I think the witnesses have indicated that they're happy to ask.
Happy to keep going.
Just ask the question.
For you to ask.
Okay, you've asked us to come here. You're not prepared properly asking questions. Get on with it. Get on with it.
I wasn't expecting to be asked to table an article, which is.
She's never heard of the article. That's the thing.
I don't believe that.
Ask. Well, it lives. Some of these articles live bigger in your life than in other people's. Ask the questions. We are not going to be here all night. You've asked us to come here. We're ready to answer questions.
I'll just counsel you that I think the chief executive of a government agency, which is spending $15 billion of taxpayer funds, would know about a major article proposing about how they're going to spend taxpayer funds. $15 billion.
The minutes are ticking along and you haven't asked a question.
It might not much money to you, but it's a lot of money. Go for your life. It's a lot of money.
You've asked us to come here.
It's a lot of money.
Additional hours. Everybody's waiting for your questions.
Yeah, we want to know how you're spending taxpayer funds. That's our job.
Ask some questions.
Transparency, accountability.
Ask some questions.
I know there are words you don't like.
Everybody.
I know there are words you don't like. So, Ms. Mannon, so you do know about this article. So she
just answered your question previously, and don't verbal her. Ask a question.
So there was an article in the Sydney Morning Herald talking about the NRF's proposed initial investments. The article says the NRF has requested a $300 million drawdown from the government and will soon be cutting its first cheque. So again, these are not actual cheques, are they? These are electronic transfers, I imagine. So was this media opportunity, how did this media opportunity come about?
Senator, without seeing the article, my assumption based on what you've said is that that's statements made by the Minister, which would not be for me to answer.
Okay, so this article was set up by the Minister's office.
Well, she said she hasn't got the article. I think the officer has gone as far as she can without the benefit of the article. If there's further questions about the provenance of the article, without the article, we can either wait for it, given the affluction of time, or put them on notice.
So the Minister said in this article that, quote, and I can tell you we are on the cusp of announcing the first investments. Recently the NRF Corporation wrote to me to request a $300 million drawdown from the government. So is that a speech that the Minister gave that you had some input into?
Senator, as you might imagine, in order to access money from the special account, the corporation is required to write to the Minister seeking the drawdown of those funds.
Okay. So what is your policy then in managing the media as a major investor now? Do you have a media policy?
Senator, we have a range of policies that govern the corporation's operations. As I mentioned, there is a process by which we consider opportunities to provide advice on the corporation's progress, and we follow that process.
Okay, I think you have the article now. Ms. Mannon?
Yes, Senator, I have it.
You know the article. So the article says a source close to the government, not authorised to speak publicly, said that the deep tech companies would be a source close to the government, not authorised to speak publicly, said that the deep tech companies would be amongst the first to receive investments. So how does this happen?
Senator, as I've explained to you, the process for the NRFC is to write to the Minister seeking a drawdown of funds from the special account, and then subsequent to that, we have an obligation under the PGPA Act to keep responsible ministers informed of our activities. But beyond that, the NRFC and its staff are bound by confidentiality agreements, including in relation to counterparties that we're working with.
It sounds like front running to me.
Well, that's just not something that you can put to the official. You can put it to the minister if you like.
Fine. Well, I guess I'll ask you then, so what is your process, what is your policy to prevent front running and to prevent leaks to the media?
Senator, as I said, with respect to the employees of the corporation, we have policies around confidentiality and conflict of interest, and people within the organisation who have access to commercially sensitive information are bound by the terms of the arrangements related to confidentiality.
Okay. Was the request for this funding or this release made in writing or verbally?
Senator, the request for the drawdown of the funds from the special account is made in writing.
Okay. And it was made, did it come from the Minister or from the department?
The request for the funding? The request for the funding came from the Chair and myself as Acting Chief Executive Officer.
It came from the Chair?
The Chair of the corporation and myself as Acting CEO issued a request to the Minister to draw down funds from the special account.
Okay, so that's how it works. So you asked the Minister?
Correct.
Okay. Were any of these investments discussed with any of the shareholder ministers?
Senator, as I said to you, we required to request a drawdown of funds from the Minister in writing, and we also have obligations under the PGPA Act to keep the responsible ministers informed of significant decisions taken by the board.
Okay, so the Minister knows about the contracts before they're signed?
Senator, as I've said to you, the board is required under the PGPA Act to provide the ministers with advice in relation to significant decisions.
Okay. So I'm going to come back to this again because I think I'm troubled by these media reports before investments have been made and contracts signed. So do you have a media policy and a risk management policy that you can provide the committee?
I can certainly take that on notice, Senator.
Okay. So how much of that $300 million drawdown has been now expended?
Senator, what I can say is that the announcements that were made last week included a $100 million commitment via a co-investment partnership with Resource Capital Funds, and the investment into Russell Mineral Equipment was the first investment, and that was for $40 million.
So there's still $260 million left? $160 million left? The contribution, the investment was $100 million into RCF, and the investment into RME was $40. So there's the remainder left ready for deployment. Okay, I just want to understand this question of the. I'm just troubled about the front running and the potential of there being damaging leaks, which could negatively impact the Commonwealth's investments here. So, is there a policy to protect the organisation's investment and due diligence process from being leaked to the media? Do you have controls for that?
As I said, Senator, those are individuals within the corporation who are working on particular transactions and have access to commercial in confidence information are bound by terms of commercial confidentiality agreements.
Okay, so you have confidentiality agreements.
Correct.
But yet you have these leaks in the newspaper.
Senator,
how do you explain that?
Senator, my reading of the article that you've provided doesn't provide an indication that that information came from an employee of the NRFC.
Okay, it says here a source close to the government, not authorised to speak, said that deep tech companies will be amongst the first to receive investments. So how do you account for that?
Senator, I can only reiterate what I've said to you previously, which is the staff of the NRFC who have access to commercially sensitive information are bound by the commercial and confidentiality agreements when dealing with that information.
What's happened here?
Senator.
Well, I think, Senator, that the official has been very clear with you about, like any special investment vehicle, like any institution that does investment, it has risk management strategies and all of the sort of material that you would expect. You are pointing to a paragraph in an article that appears to me to be fundamentally about the minister's speech. Who the journalist claims is a source close to the government is not something that the official nor I are in a position to speculate about, but I just observe that the paragraph you're referring to, far from being a sort of hot scoop, that says that deep tech companies would be among the first to receive investments. That's a bit like saying Tuesday is the day that is sandwiched between Monday and Wednesday. It's not a hot scoop, is it? And the official's really not in a position to be able to explain much more than she has, and nor am I. I'm happy to take the question on notice, but I'm not sure it goes anywhere.
So, Senator Bragg, it's 7:20 and we need to conclude at 8, and we've got 2 more witnesses and senators that have questions. So can we release this witness?
I'm going as fast as I can.
Can we release
I can probably
this
knock it
witness?
off in 10, I reckon.
10. I'll call a private meeting of the committee and the committee will suspend. The committee resumes. In terms of time management, we advise that we've had a meeting and that we'll move to NOPSEMA at 7:30. We have a few more questions for the NRFC. Senator Bragg.
As long as my tea doesn't go down the wrong way.
Senator Bragg.
Excuse me. So, I guess I understand that this is an independent fund, is it not?
Rebecca Mannon, Acting Chief Executive Officer, National Reconstruction Fund Corporation. Senator, that's correct. The NRFC is an independent.
So if we go back to our favourite article here in the Sydney Morning Herald from the 13th of November, I note that the Minister is widely quoted in this, talking about the independent investments of the fund, and our other favourite Minister, Minister Ayres, is also widely quoted in the media talking about the fund. So is the fund independent or not?
Yes, Senator, the fund is independent.
Okay. So are you in any way, what are you going to do about these, I mean, I would call them leaks, or I'd call it front running at least. What will you do to ensure that next time there's going to be an investment made, it's not going to be read about in the newspaper before it's done?
Senator, as I've said before, the members of the corporation who have access to confidential information are bound by confidentiality agreements, and they are expected to uphold the obligations under those agreements, and that's the manner in which we operate.
Yeah, and how do you enforce those?
Senator, there's expectations on all of the employees of the corporation, and they are expected to behave in a manner and uphold their obligations under the terms and conditions of their employment, and also in relation to any other agreements that have been entered into on behalf of the corporation.
Yeah, okay. And will any steps be taken to look into these comments in the newspaper before the last investments were made?
Well, Senator, as I said to you before, I don't think there's any suggestion, at least in the article in front of me, that the source that is being referred to is an employee of the NRFC.
Okay. So what exactly does Russell Mineral Equipment do?
Senator, as Dr Manning previously advised, they are a manufacturer of mining technology equipment that helps to improve the safety and the productivity of mines.
So it's exactly what the source close to the government and authorised to speak publicly said. It's deep tech, isn't it?
I'm not sure, Senator, that I would characterise that as deep tech.
What would you call it then?
I'd call it mining technologies that help to improve the productivity and the safety of mining operations.
Okay, sounds like tech to me. Well, so what were the particulars of these individual investments that we share with the shareholder ministers before the announcement?
Senator, as I have previously said, we have obligations under the PGPA Act to keep responsible ministers informed of significant decisions, and they will provide advice in relation to those significant decisions. Sorry, Senator?
How much detail were the ministers given?
They'll provide detail about the significant decisions made by the board.
Okay, and was there a meeting with the minister and the chair before the announcements?
The chair and the minister meet at regular intervals. I'm not sure at what time frame you're specifically requesting.
Before the announcement.
Just before the announcement last week,
yeah.
Senator?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. The chair and Dr Russell, who is the founder of RME, both met with the minister immediately prior to the announcement.
Okay, and did you take input from the minister?
Input from the minister into what, Senator?
Or into this investment judgment you've made?
No, Senator.
Okay, so it's a one-way transaction then. You share information, probably a poor choice of words, but it's a one-way information exchange, is it?
Yeah. Senator, there's a provision in the NRFC Act, I believe it's section 72, but colleagues will correct me if I've gotten that wrong, that prevents the minister from either directly or indirectly directing the corporation to make or not make particular investments. So the independence of the organisation is clearly set out in the corporation's legislative framework.
Okay. So can you table your media policy?
Senator, I think I've already taken on notice.
You don't have it with you?
I don't.
Okay. And was the media policy implemented and enforced successfully in relation to this first round of investments?
Senator, we have a procedure that is in place in relation to the steps that we will go through to get to announcement of investments. The first premise of that is that those announcements are agreed between the NRFC and the counterparties. It takes into account a range of different factors, including market disclosure obligations, the needs of the counterparty and availability of key stakeholders.
Last question.
Can I just maybe on this I think it would be useful, Senator Bragg, if you acquainted yourself as well with Section 83 of the Act, which says that ministers may publish on the internet or in any other way that the minister considers appropriate a report, a document or information given to the minister administering this Act by the accountable authority of the corporation, and it goes on. So some of the material that you're seeking is, and Ms Mannon has undertaken to provide on notice that, but some of it is actually contained in the relevant legislation.
No, that's great. So
last question.
So you've got $5 billion in the account. You've invested.
No, the evidence of the official was that $5 billion is allocated. Yeah. And they've drawn down that is held by the Commonwealth, and they are able to draw down on it by request as is appropriate.
Yeah, I understand that. And there's another 10 available, is there?
Correct, Senator.
Yeah, and so when do you get that?
Senator.
Senator, that's got to be provided to the corporation no later than July 29?
2029.
Yeah.
Okay, and how long will it take to invest that $15 billion?
Sorry, how long will it take to invest the $15 billion? Senator, the corporation is working very hard to consider proposals that are in a pipeline and to undertake the assessment of those in a robust way, undertaking appropriate due diligence as you would expect when we're investing taxpayer money. And we're considering a range of strategies to deploy that capital in an efficient way.
Will most of it be spent before the election?
I'm sorry, Senator?
Will most of it be spent before the election or invested before the election?
Senator, I just repeat my previous answer, which we're working hard to consider the proposals in our pipeline and to be able to make those investments as quickly as possible.
Senator Bragg,
Thank you very much.
You misunderstand the question that says how long before the $15 billion is expended misunderstands that, as the official just said, the timetable for when funds are to be set aside, but also misunderstands these are investments, co-investments and loans. That is, there is a perpetual capacity here to grow the size of the fund and to constantly reinvest the fund into Australian manufacturing businesses. It's not like one of these sleazy grant schemes that the Morrison government operated where the money's just tipped out the door. It is invested in a systematic way.
Thank you very much, Ms Mannon and team from the NRFC. Something final you wanted to add?
Sorry, Chair, I just wanted to provide accuracy on the remaining credits of the $10 billion, if I can. Under Section 52, subsection 4, the remaining $10 billion is to be credited to the special account before the 2nd of July 2029.
Thank you very much for answering our questions. You go with our thanks. Thank you. The committee now welcomes representatives from NOPSEMA, who I know we have online. So we welcome Ms McCarry and team.
Hi, Chair. Sue McCarry, Chief Executive Officer of NOPSEMA.
Great. We can see you and we can hear you. Thank you very much for being there for us. Did you have any opening remarks that you wish to give?
No, Senator. I think the opening statement was tabled when we started our appearance a few weeks ago.
Great. Thank you. Senator Whish-Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Look, I'll end home to put most of my questions on notice. But could I just ask I suppose, a broad question to start with in terms of how NOPSEMA regulates companies by issuing types of notices. I've got a list here of nearly 40 different notices given to, as an example, SO Australia over the last 10 years for a number of notices, general directions, OHS prohibition notices, environmental improvement notices, so on and so forth. How many of these? How often does NOPSEMA actually fine a company or penalise a company for a breach, or do you generally always take an approach of providing a directions notice and then giving the company time to comply?
Look, thank you for the question, Senator, and probably it is good to give a general answer to start with. So the way in which the regulatory system is set up is, first of all, as you'd be aware, NOPSEMA is involved in providing permission for an operator to commence operations through a number of permissioning documents. So those permissioning documents are, we often refer to a safety case, an environment plan, or a well operations management plan. They have to be assessed against the regulations as they're written, and they need to be able to demonstrate to us that they've identified risk, both safety risk, environmental risk and well integrity risk, and that those risks are being reduced to as low as reasonable practicable. What those number of notices actually shows is that our inspectors are actually doing what their job is to do. We actually go out and do a number of compliance activities, from inspections, including investigations, to actually ensure that those operators are doing what they said they would do in those permissioning documents. So we hold them to making sure that they do those. And that's done through a whole range of inspections and investigations of our staff. So when they pick up issues, it's our job to correct. And any regulator will have a number, particularly of improvement notices, which is us just doing inspections, picking up little issues, so they actually demonstrate that we're doing our job. If it's something a little more serious, so it depends on what is actually occurring as to what kind of notice we will actually give. So an improvement notice, for example, actually deals with smaller things where we're just correcting. So if we're satisfied, for example, that they're actually in contravention of what we call as an OH&S law or an environmental law or a well integrity law, the improvement notice is there to actually say to the company, you are not following your procedures in this space. And generally, it's a fairly quick correction, although sometimes they might have a longer timeline. Something like a prohibition notice, there has to be an immediate threat to health or safety, or an immediate threat to environment or the integrity of a well. So we need to actually be able to prove that. And of course, they can actually step up to a direction. A direction is actually given where we're actually requiring the title holder to do certain things. And there are a number of different powers. I won't go into all of those. I can actually provide you on our website is a copy of our enforcement policy where it actually steps out all of those. And some of those directions under certain parts of regulations, we can actually give a direction to an operator to actually undertake activities outside their title area, which might include clean-up activities, etc. And then obviously in the most serious of cases, and like any prosecution, when it is we want to commence that, or we provide a brief to the Commonwealth Department of Public Prosecutions, that is really there for the more serious incidents that may occur, or if an operator, when we're providing those directions or improvement notices and they're not abiding by them. So we've got the ability to take more serious action.
So when you say something's closed, whether it's a prohibition notice or an improvement notice, you've then rectified that situation without
Correct, Senator. So they've actually done what we've asked them to do, and our inspectors will actually have a look at that. So they'll actually go, if you like, it's a follow-up inspection to ensure that those activities had actually been completed. Okay.
So, I mean, for example, are you able to tell me in recent years how many penalties and fines have been delivered by NOPSEMA, or have you been able to rectify all these serious situations without penalties and fines?
Senator Cameron Grebe, Deputy Chief Executive Officer, I was thinking about my answer already, Deputy Chief Executive Officer for Strategic Regulation Improvement. I think to add on to one aspect, there is a very low level of enforcement undertaken where infringement notices, which is a fine, I think you referred to fines in your question, fines are for very minor breaches, failing to notify of a change of contact person for an operator, for example, can institute a fine. When it comes to breaches of legislation, including breaches of a notice, enforcement notice or a general direction, to secure a financial penalty, we have to secure a prosecution. We have and do continue to maintain investigations towards prosecutions, and we have actually secured successfully prosecutions of more significant breaches of the legislation that have resulted in the court imposing fines. But it's a summary of it is the answer of all of that is that in the most part, our legislation requires for anything that is a substantial compliance gap requires a court mandating a financial penalty be applied. We don't have the power and ability to simply fine a company for example, for being contrary to their safety case or their environment plan or not complying with the improvement notice. We need to secure a prosecution, either if there's criminal penalties against the criminal penalty provisions or if there is, in case of some of them, a civil penalty provision, then similarly the proof of a civil, for prosecuting against a civil penalty.
Okay, look, I'll put my other questions on notice, but just in relation to a general direction that you gave ESO on the 20th of May 2021 to undertake all appropriate planning and commence decommissioning activities with all structures, property and equipment no longer in use to be removed no later than 30th September 2027, and commission an independent review of decommissioning activities and report annually to NOPSEMA. That's, for example, one that's open. Is obviously they've got till 2027. Are you able to provide an update on those decommissioning activities? And you could do that on notice, and whether you're confident that'll be achieved by 2027?
Yes, Senator, just with all of those general directions around decommissioning, I think I explained last time that there's a very long lead time because there are only a certain number of vessels, etc., in the world that can actually undertake this sort of heavy lift work. Yes, we've been working with ESO very closely and their planning is well down the track to actually commence that decommissioning. But I'm happy to provide more information where we can on notice.
Thank you, Senator Whish-Wilson.
Could I ask one question to the Minister, if I could, Chair? And he may not be able to answer it because I understand the Minister Husick's been working with NOPTA on PEP 11.
Minister
it has been...
It's Minister Husick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
So his last...
I suspect that's an early indicator that I may not be able to answer this question, Senator Whish-Wilson, but I'll give it I'll give it a red-hot go.
Yeah, look, it's worth a try. So the Minister Husick, there's obviously a process underway, and I think recently the proponents of PEP 11 had to provide their submission to Minister Husick by the 15th of November, so last week. They had to provide those submissions. I just want to check whether those submissions were received and how long it's going to be till the Minister makes a decision on this. Yeah. He made a preliminary decision.
Look, I don't know the answer to that question. If we're able to provide you any further information on notice, we will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Whish-Wilson. Thank you very much to Ms McCarry and team. You go with our thanks. That concludes our questions. Thank you. Thank you. We now welcome CSIRO.
Thank you.
And we welcome Dr Doug Hilton and team, who I know will be coming to the table now. And I also recall that Dr Hilton went through his opening statement. And so there won't be a need to have a further opening statement.
It sounded more like a direction than an observation, but
I'm sure. And so as Dr Hilton and team come to the table, I'm prepared to give the call to Senator Hodgins-May. And welcome back, Dr Hilton and team. Am I right that you don't wish to supplement the opening statement that you gave us recently?
I do not. Thank you, Senator.
Great. Thank you. We'll go straight to questions. Senator Hodgins-May.
Thank you, Chair. During budget estimates in June this year, I referred to an article published by CSIRO in the APPEA Journal in May 2023, which was about carbon capture and storage utilisation project in the Northern Territory. In that publication, on page 3, CSIRO says, and I quote, "Future potential unabated emissions have been modelled on the basis of published company development plans and the Middle Arm Development Precinct industrial development scenarios." As you know, since June, I've asked a couple of times now when the modelling will be released. I was told by the end of July by Dr Mayfield, but it wasn't provided. And more recently, I was told by Senator Farrell that it would be released in October 2024. It's now near the end of November, and I just want to ask, has has your research finally been released? Will it be released?
Thanks, Senator. I'll pass that to Dr Mayfield.
Yeah. So Peter Mayfield, Executive Director for Environment, Energy and Resources. No, the work hasn't been completed. It's getting close, but my understanding at this point in time that there's 2 tranches of report that will be released soon. We expect it will be before end of December, but they've had delays with getting access to data and completing some of the analysis. So they're getting close, but they're not complete yet.
So the main delay is getting hold of data, is that?
It's one of the delays.
One of the delays.
Yeah.
What are the other delays? Can you...
Some resourcing issues where we're sort of competing projects, and also just getting some of the analysis undertaken. Yeah.
I think I might have mentioned this previously, but you gave a presentation based on emissions research to the gas industry over 18 months ago. So I suppose there really is an expectation that some of this data is available to be released at some point. Can you commit that it'll be before March, before the election?
Yes, it'll definitely be before then, so it's imminent.
And do you have any preliminary figures or ranges of emissions impacts from Middle Arm that you can share with the committee in the meantime?
No, I don't have that with me, Senator, I'm sorry. But,
can you take it on notice, perhaps? Or?
Well, we can, but it will probably come out with the release of the reports. So there'll be the first tranche of reports, probably 2 reports coming out shortly.
Okay. On 31st of October, Australian energy producers announced that it will co-host the world's leading carbon capture, utilisation and storage conference in Perth in 2026 in partnership with CSIRO, CO2 CRC and the Australian Government. Can I ask how much has CSIRO spent on this conference so far?
Senator, so at this stage, I believe we're in the planning phase. I'm not aware of what we've spent, so I'd have to take that on notice. There won't be a lot of expenditure at this point in time. It's just been announced. We've been part of that forum, it's an IEA forum, for quite some time, and consistent with our involvement with CCS research.
And can I ask also that you release how much you anticipate spending, what the budget looks like for that when you...
We'll have to take it on notice. Whether the planning's at that level of detail at this stage, I don't know.
Okay. And who's led the bid? Is it AEP or CSIRO?
I'm not aware of who's the actual lead. CSIRO's been a representative in that area for a long time, but I think it's a joint activity at this point in time. Yeah.
Yeah, you could maybe get clarity on that. I'll take that on notice, that'd be great. What other project partnerships does CSIRO have with APPIA or AEP that you're aware of?
With the organisation itself, we don't, we participate in some of their conferences and things like that, but our relationship tends to be more directly with projects and companies.
So just this?
So if you think about our Geoscience work, we're involved with a number of gas producing companies there trying to do research, which has, I guess, made understanding of the environmental issues associated with some of those developments, especially in Queensland, better understood so that the community gets information. So there have been a lot of our relationships through those sort of involvements.
Yeah, we've been funding this for 20 years and only one project operates at a 60% failure rate. Do you actually think or believe that CCS will ever work or be rolled out in Australia?
I'm not familiar with what you're referring to before there, Senator, but in terms of globally, there are CCS projects which are operating, and in the US there's a lot of projects where they sequester CO2. Sometimes it's for oil recovery, but the technology, it's technically viable. Economically, it needs more it's not economic at this point in time, but technically it's viable.
Senator Hodgkins was referring to the Chevron project, which has been quite public about they haven't met their objectives. But you say there's projects around the world, but how many of them are in the ocean and under the ocean?
I'd have to take it on notice in terms of how many exact, but you'd be aware of the Sleipner project in the North Sea, so that's one of them. Yeah.
I might return to questions that I raised in last estimates and table the documents that I sent to the Secretariat and that were circulated in our last estimates session.
That's okay.
Yeah, good to go? Yeah, great. Yeah. And conscious that my colleague wants to ask some questions as well. CSIRO's 23-24 annual report on pages 144 to 48 shows the breakdown of payments made to your board members, key management team, senior executive staff and other highly paid staff. Dr Hilton, is it correct that bonuses were paid to the acting CEO, senior executive staff and other highly paid staff?
I understand from the table that the Deputy Chief Executive was paid at-risk component of her salary.
No, we've seen this before, haven't we? Yeah.
So, can you explain the total amount of those salary at-risk payments or bonus payments? I think we touched on this last time.
We did. So Tom Maynard, Chief Operating Officer. In the instance of the Acting Chief Executive, that was consistent with the arrangements in place for the Chief Executive as set out by the Remuneration Tribunal. Essentially, it's a judgment call of the Board in relation to that payment and what percentage of the available incentive payment is provided to the individual at the time.
And do you have that quantum?
I don't have that on me. Obviously, that's a discussion between the individuals, but I can take that question on notice, Senator.
Yeah, I think that because the annual report that you've got in front of you, as you can see, it doesn't show the full totals. It's sort of lacking in some of that detail. But would you have a range, like roughly, how much you think was paid in salary at risk / bonus payments? So, the at-risk component that's been paid is the figure that's contained in the table. But the cumulative amount of that across those groups, senior executives.
So I think and I think we're on page 144. Yep. Is that right? So among those senior people, the only salary at-risk payment for that year was the payment to the acting chief executive for the period she was acting.
That was the only salary at risk
for those executives.
For the key management personnel on that table.
Yeah.
In 2023, CSIRO admitted that its Deputy Chair, David Knox, had been overpaid by $200,000 between 2018 and 20. Was this paid as a bonus or other benefit and entitlement?
No, it wasn't, Senator. It was in relation to Mr Knox, who was appointed at the period as the Managing Director and CEO of Australian Naval Infrastructure to CSIRO, and therefore he was ineligible to also receive a payment for the board.
And has this money now been recovered?
It has been recovered.
Fully recovered, yep.
Yeah, including the superannuation component, which was the last outstanding amount when we were questioning at estimates around 12 months ago.
And is David is still on the board and receives a salary in super? Or?
No, Mr Knox resigned from the board in, I believe it was September of last year.
And have any other staff been overpaid?
Staff members?
Or board members?
I'd have to take the detail of that on notice. On occasions, staff members do get overpaid, and for example, when being on leave and not having the leave credits and not returning to work, for example. So I'll have to take the detail of that on notice to confirm how many.
But do your questions go to that level of detail about overpayments for staff in the kind of categories that have been referred to, or are they really about board directors and senior management? If we can save the organisation some work, so if it's just in relation to senior staff and board directors, I think that's an easier piece of work. Yeah. Thank you.
Just let me. Returning to our previous exchange on 7 November regarding Data 61, Dr Hilton, you said that no jobs would be cut this financial year. What about the following financial year? Will there be cuts to Data 61 that you've identified or projected?
No, we have no plans, Senator.
I might go to my colleague to ask further questions, and if there's time, I'll ask.
Thank you. Senator Whish-Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Look, I'll be quick. G'day, Dr. Hilton. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Senator.
Could you update us on whether CSIRO has been able to find the 300 full days for the RV investigator in forward years, 26 to 28, to remain operational for 300 days?
Thank you for that. I will hand to Professor Huntington, who is the executive in charge of our national infrastructure.
Eleanor Huntington, Executive Director for Digital National Facilities and Collections. So we have been able to confirm that the investigator will have full sea operations. I'm just looking for the exact details for the next couple of years. I think it's 26, 27, but I will just double check that right now.
And that would be for 300 days a year?
We talk in terms of full year operations, which is notionally around 300 days at sea. If there happen to be storms somewhere, then obviously we have to move that around a bit.
But that's and you can confirm that is the case for 26, 27?
I will double check that number, but it is around that time. Yep.
Great, because obviously a lot of these programs, as you know, have long lead times, so it'd be good to know that. And Minister, you're aware this is a great Labor legacy, this ship, and all its great work, and it'd be good to see that fully funded. So that's good news. Could I ask just a very quick one, whether across any of your desks you've been asked by either the DQ, the Environment Department, or the perhaps the Fisheries DAF on a report from the Senate Environment and Economics Committee relating to Centra stephanus invasive sea urchins? CSIRO did some really important work during the Senate inquiry. It was called a win-win under our oceans, and it recommended a Centro task force to manage marine invasive species. CSIRO did a report saying that the Crown of Thorns management program that's been unrolled on the Barrier Reef would be a suitable model for the states and federal government to use on the Great Southern Reef. Could anyone confirm if you've been asked to provide any inputs to those departments to respond to the Senate inquiry?
It would probably require us to do a full email check. Happy to take that on notice, Senator.
Yeah, that'd be great if you could take that on notice. And just a couple of quick questions in my remaining time around has obviously always been and is increasingly becoming a controversial international issue, and that's deep sea mining. Now, I have asked a number of questions over the years about CSIRO's involvements with the metals company, TMC. Are you able to give me an update on the current status of CSIRO's work with TMC, specifically in relation to its proposed operations in the Clarion-Clipperton zone in the Pacific?
I'll pass that one to Dr Mayfield.
So, Senator, in terms of our involvement with the deep sea mining work, so we're working on an environmental framework, and that work continues. It's being produced as a series of 5 papers. So the first of those has now been published.
Yep.
And they'll be published over the coming period of time. And we expect that they'll be completed through June of next year. There's been some variations.
Could you provide me the details of that first report on notice?
I can. I don't have the name of it off the top of my head.
I don't expect you to now, but if you could. So the other 4 are coming?
The other 4 are in process, yep.
Okay, and are they peer reviewed?
Everything is being peer reviewed through our normal processes. We also, I think we've talked previously about the fact that we've got some external reviewers that we're using as well. Right. And everything that we actually ultimately produce will be publicly available. That's why we're going the publication route.
Okay. Now, I put an order of production of documents in which the Minister signed off on, Minister Eyre signed off on, around email exchanges dated 2nd of December 2022, around CSIRO, to use the words from the emails, seeking $200,000 from TMC to fly around the world to conferences for what they called expert elicitation workshops between 23rd of Jan and 3rd of February 2023. Are you aware of those, where those workshops went ahead and TMC provided the $200,000 in funding?
I'd have to check on the specific how they were funded, but I am aware that workshops took place, and this was part of getting the body of global knowledge and identifying some of the external reviewers, so we were looking for independent reviewers.
Did CSIRO regularly approach private firms who hold contracts with CSIRO for funds to attend international conferences and events? Do you think that's appropriate?
So in terms of the scope of work, as we saw it, so having independent review was part of that and knowing who the expert base, so we saw that as part of the scope of work to actually do the job that was defined. So it's basically putting it as part of the scope of works.
But do you think it could, I mean, obviously conflicts of interest can be real or perceived, but do you see either of those in a case where a company's, has a contract with a private company, and it is a very controversial setting, and they're, they're approaching the company to pay expenses for CSIRO staff to do their work?
So CSIRO engaged in a contract with TMC to deliver a certain product. To do that, we ascertained that we needed to understand what was happening globally. We needed to also have independent reviewers. So we see
Wouldn't
that
that be covered by the lump sum of your contract, though? But why would you need to seek additional funds to fly around the world?
As you go through the planning process, I think you identify addial things. But
I know things
the project was funded by TMC, so this is an addition to it. In terms of the how we use that funds, it was used for making sure that we got balanced science out of it. So I don't think there's any conflict there. It's about doing the job properly, ultimately.
So they wouldn't have been covered by the original contract then? The idea of having
I'd have to check on
international
the
conference
original
for
budget, how it's split up, but obviously there's a shortfall.
Right, and so when's this process going to be finished?
So at this stage we're expecting
the last answer.
The final work, given that there's been a couple of variations in the scope and again some challenges with getting access to certain data. We think it's June 25 will be the completion of the project.
In time for the international conference.
Thank you very much, Senator Whish-Wilson and Senator Hodgins-May. Thank you, Dr Hilton and team for coming for this hearing. That concludes our questions. The committee stands adjourned.
Sorry, Chair. I just wanted to confirm full-year operations to financial year 27.
Thank you, Professor Huntington. The committee stands adjourned.